In the last section, we started making our new component, day item, to show each day of the week. Let's continue that now by adding some simple styling on our text element here. So inside of our style our component section, we'll say var styles, and then we're going to create a new style sheet again. So we'll say style sheet dot create. We'll pass it an object, and just the same as last time, we're going to have only one property. And remember, we can name these properties anything we want. So in our case, I'm just going to go ahead and call it day. Simple enough. We get access to a lot of different CSS styling properties inside of here. And keep in mind, I keep on saying CSS kind of out of habit here. We're not necessarily writing CSS, but it follows a lot of the same ideas, property names, and property values. So given that we have access to a lot of the same property values, you might guess that we get something like font size. So we'll define font size, which will be 18. You don't need to worry about writing pics or pixels or anything like that on here, just 18 is fine. Next, we'll define the color. We get access to all the same kind of RGB and hex value and just regular old color names like, say, green if we wanted to. In our case, we're going to go ahead and use a hex code, so we'll say pound 000FF. Cool. So now that we have our day style defined, we'll go ahead and add the style to our text tag by writing style equals curly braces styles.day. You may have noticed that we this kind of funny looking syntax here. This is something that comes straight from JSX. The curly braces that we have here don't actually represent an object at all. So there's no real concept of an object here. It's more of a demarcation of, hey, we're about to make access to a JavaScript variable. So styles.day is a JavaScript variable, right? And we want to pass that variable to this text element. So whenever we want to kind of interpolate or stick in a JavaScript element, or excuse me, a JavaScript variable into our JSX, we always end up using these curly braces. Okay, so now that our style is applied, we're going to do our last step, which is to export some code from this file here. So remember, our initial component, index.js, needed to render that root component to the screen, but every other file that we create is going to be exporting the code we wrote in here so that it can be made available somewhere else. So to do so, we'll write module.exports equals day item. Remember how I said earlier that this file, all of the files we write behave as kind of sandboxes or silos? Well, this module.exports property is that one linkage that allows us to kind of break free of that silo. It allows us to reach outside this file. It's what tells anyone who tries to get access to the code inside of here, hey, here's the publicly exposed API. Here's what you can make use of if you want to get used to or get access to this code. So this is only one half of the puzzle though. We've exposed it to the world, but now other components need to somehow consume it, right? They need to say, hey, that day item component? I see it there on the horizon. I want to go out and reach it. I want to grab it. So that's the other half of the linkage that we're going to define. I'm going to go ahead and save this file, and then we're going to go over to index.ios.js, and we're going to form up that linkage inside of this file. We're going to do so using the require syntax, just the same as we did with React Native. So on line 7, we'll write var day item equals require day item. Makes sense, right? We have a file called day item. We have a library called React Native. Makes sense, right? I should be able to require this file into index.ios.js. So let's go ahead and save this, refresh, and sure enough, we get an error, of course, right? Nothing's ever that easy. So this is the one gigantic gotcha around the require keyword. We know that React Native was required just fine. Obviously this code was here. We weren't getting any errors on the screen, nothing like that. But when we tried to emulate the same pattern for DayItem, we went ahead and got this error right here. We couldn't find that module. So what's the difference between these two uses of require? Well, the difference is React Native is a library that we didn't install, but was installed for us when we generated our project. Whenever we install a library for our app, we can require it using just the words of, or just the title of the library itself, which in this case was just React-Native. On the other hand, DayItem was a file that we created. We made DayItem. It's not a library that was installed for us. Whenever we try to require in a file that we wrote, we have to use a slightly different syntax. And that different syntax is to give the exact project path to the file that we're trying to require. So you'll notice that our file is inside of the src folder and then DayItem. So what we're going to do is add /, which says starting in the current directory of weekdays, walk into the src folder, and then get access to day-item. So again, libraries we can just use by just direct name, and everything works out just fine. Files that we write, however, we have to give the very explicit project path to. So we're going to go ahead and save this, and we'll refresh, and terrific, it didn't crash. We don't see anything different on the page, but that's just because we haven't made use of the DayItem component yet. Cool. So everything is looking good. The last thing we need to do here is place our DayItem component into our weekdays component. So this is where the idea of nesting comes from. We're going to talk a little bit about nesting in the next section. For right now, let's just go ahead and add it. So we're going to treat DayItem exactly as we treated the view and text tags. We're just going to create a new tag. DayItem can be, we're not placing anything inside of it, no additional text or any other components, so we'll use what's called a self-closing tag. We don't need to write a second DayItem, we just write DayItem / and then close. So let's go ahead and save this and refresh it. Oh, okay, so I knew when I was looking at that I had something wrong. Invalid hex color. So over back in DayItem, our style is incorrect here. It just needs to be one more 0. So 4 zeros FF. And there we go, much better. So we now get a day of the week, and it's colored blue, just as we expected. Great. So let's do one last quick review here. We created a new a new file called DayItem. And inside of DayItem, we defined our 4 different sections, and then we exported our code so that it would be available elsewhere inside of our application. Inside of index.js, we created that linkage. We accepted that API from DayItem, so we imported it as the variable DayItem. Because DayItem is a React component as well, we can stick it just directly into our JSX here. Once it's inside of our JSX, whenever weekdays gets rendered, DayItem gets rendered as well. Whatever gets returned from DayItem's render method gets stuck right here inside of weekdays. This concept is referred to as composition or nesting inside of React. Cool, so this is looking great. Just one issue, we only have a single day of the week, no other days here. Let's go ahead and tackle that in the next section.